slump of 2 decades, Japan's economy needs a boost.
アベノミクスとは何か。それは雇用を増やし、賃金を増やしていく政策が私たちの経済政策であります。
Stock markets love the government's policies, and big companies' profits are up.
It's the third biggest economy in the world. Here in the heart of the capital, things seem vibrant, but not everyone is feeling the benefits.
Abenomics may be helping big companies, but not us.
Is there something more fundamental about life here which is holding Japan back? Does the way we do business, the way we live, even the way we love need to change?
I'm traveling across my home country to discover the real economy and whether the government's policies really are jump-starting Japan at all.
When I was growing up, there was a saying that the entire nation was middle class. 一億総中流. There was definitely a sense that the economy was growing. But not anymore. This is the man who's made it his mission to revive the country's economy, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. His economic policies are dubbed Abenomics, and it's seen as one of the most aggressive sets of policies that modern Japan has seen. He's pumped billions of yen into the economy and plans radical structural reforms. My journey starts in a place where times are tough. I'm headed to Futsu in Chiba. It's only 2 hours outside Tokyo, but the city is fast running out of money. The situation is so bad, it may go bankrupt. So why hasn't Abenomics reached these shores? This is how fishermen in Futsu start their day. One last chance to warm up. Then they set sail in search of seaweed. Just an hour later, they're back. Baskets full of what they call nori, a staple of the Japanese diet for many centuries. It's a $2 billion industry across the country, and for this town, the biggest part of its economy. But to turn their catch into something ready for consumers takes machines which cost almost $200,000. What was done manually before is no longer viable to produce dried nori sheets in bulk. This aging industry is struggling to keep up and could badly use a boost, which it's not getting.
Abenomics may be helping big companies, but the primary industry like ours hasn't felt the benefit at all. We are affected by the weather and oil prices for our boats, and yet we cannot decide how much our seaweed gets sold for.
Selling it is also harder now. Mr. Nakazawa has been doing that for 40 years. When he started, there was no sales tax. Recently, it's been raised from 5 to 8%.
Of course it affects our sales. Customers get used to it after a while, but I feel they've been tightening their belt.
And the government plans to raise the sales tax to 10%.
I only buy necessities now. After the tax hike, I hesitate to buy anything expensive.
Even at 10%, it's still relatively low compared to other developed economies. And Prime Minister Shinzo Abe argues that it needed to go up to tackle Japan's ballooning debt.
But this port town is just one example of many rural cities that are struggling. Kaksa or disparity is a word that I heard repeatedly here. If Abenomics is to jumpstart Japan, its benefits need to be felt across the country.
Critics say Abenomics is only serving the rich and the powerful. I asked William Saito, who advises the government, why are big companies given a tax cut when consumers are bearing the burden?
The interesting thing about the corporate tax is to tax corporations, they have to be making money first. And so the issue here is many Japanese companies, quite frankly, aren't making money to be taxed. And so the impact in cutting the corporate tax rate, I think, is minimal compared to spreading, I guess, the pain across the board here and doing it across a consumption tax.
It wasn't always this way. In fact, Japan was once known as the innovative engine of the world. I'm going to find out if Abenomics can help Japan lead the way again, and I'm starting by going back to the past.
This is what made Sony world famous. A portable cassette player which revolutionized how people listened to music in 1979. This room is Yuji Shimada's treasure box. He has 200 Walkmans, and to collectors, they're worth the equivalent of a brand new car.
There were so many models that were not practical, but so much fun. I used to get excited every month, wondering what Sony would release next. But now the company only seems to care about its profit. And it's sad to see their innovative spirits are gone.
And it's not just Sony. Many Japanese companies had to cut costs over the last few decades, and innovation became low priority. It may be difficult for one company to keep leading the way, but meet Dr. Yoshiro Nakamatsu, a man who claims to have invented 3,500 products since the 1950s, including floppy disks. And he thinks today's education is not producing creative minds.
Before the war, such as I graduated at Tokyo Imperial University, this is before the war, it's a very, very creative education they made. But after the war, completely education system changed. So presently, I'm very worrying about education.
So can Japan still excite the world with its innovation? Here, these young inventors are sharing this space to brainstorm. And just downstairs in this same building, there's even a little factory. There's equipment worth $8.5 million here. And with a monthly fee of just $250, anyone can use this space. One of the main tenants is startup consumer electronics maker Cerevo.
I used to work for Panasonic, and what I realised was big companies are good at what I call serial innovation, making a better version of the current product but not actually innovating something brand new. Sony came up with Walkman when the company was much smaller. I don't think it's only in Japan, but the bigger the companies get, the harder it becomes to take a risk.
This hub of innovation is open 24/7, and it exists through private funding. And the hope is the next IT product will be born here. Here's another invention from the past, the bullet train, which entered service just over 50 years ago. To encourage more innovation, the Prime Minister has set up a fund to offer entrepreneurs financial support. But is it working? I'm heading to Nara to meet one man who's quit his highly paid banking job to spread Japanese culture to the world. This is where the history of Japanese bathing started in the 8th century. This tiny room at Hokke Temple is a sauna that was used to clean your body and soul before entering the temple. Inspired by the ancient bathing culture, Naoki Mita opened a spa. But the government and financial institutions both turned down his idea as too risky when he asked for financial support.
The typical Japanese banking sector is asking us the balance sheet and the monthly profit and loss result, which we don't have.
The difficulty in raising money has been partly why Japan's level of entrepreneurship is one of the lowest in the world. But things are starting to change. These young students all have ideas for their own business, and by sharing this house, they save money and learn business tips from each other. Kentaro Kuroishi himself is a young entrepreneur who set up this share house for wannabe entrepreneurs.
It's becoming easier, especially for young students, to raise money for a startup. The government support is helpful because it makes private investors more eager to invest in us.
For these students, starting a business may be becoming easier, but to make it a success in the big wide world remains a challenge.
Coming up after the break.
How Japan's aging population is affecting the country's youth. And why the government wants to globalize the next generation. As I continue my journey, there's one big challenge that keeps appearing. Japan is turning grey fast. Today, more than a quarter of its population is above the age of 65, and the number of young people who can look after them is shrinking. "29-year-old Midori Ide is a care worker. 6 days a week, she looks after the elderly. And on her only day off, she's spending it with her grandmother. At the age of 96, every step requires assistance.
It's a dilemma because while I'm at work looking after other people's grandparents, my own grandma is at a nursing home, but I need to earn money, even though my salary is very small. Juggling them is hard, and I don't have time to myself, but I want to make sure my grandma is happy.
In 1950, there were 12 workers supporting one senior resident in terms of social securities and healthcare. Now there are only 2 to 3. And by 2060, when I'll be the one to be looked after, there'll only be 1 worker supporting me. A possible solution is to accept immigrants, but it's not a popular move.
It doesn't matter if the policy is popular or not. I've been saying for a long time that Japan needs 10 million foreigners in the next 50 years, because at this birth rate, there'll be very few Japanese children.
In a country where foreigners make up less than 2% of its population, this facility is a rare success case. It's been employing foreign care workers for more than a decade. It took me a while to get used to it, but they're brilliant, says this resident. But the hurdle is high. Pinky Alvarez is from the Philippines, and she had to learn all the medical terms and pass an exam in Japanese.
Communication is very, very difficult. The words that they use is mukashi kara. No.
The language that they use is very traditional, so I've struggled with that. But everyone here has been very helpful.
For Midori, working abroad is one of many dreams that she had to put on hold. And she worries about her future, about her elderly parents, and if she can start her own family one day. This is an example of Japan's demographic problem. It's not a time bomb that's about to go off. It has already gone off. But Seijiro Takeshita says accepting more immigrants is a tricky balancing act for the government.
we've been excessively conservative about introduction of immigrants, and considering the demographics, we would have to introduce a lot more. We have to deregulate a lot more, but making sure that it would not cause the societal damage or societal conflict that you're seeing, for example, in Western Europe, because that is totally unacceptable by the Japanese, I would say, public as a whole. So I think you have to play a very much of a delicate game where you have to deregulate, but not excessively to a point where it would basically hinder the homogeneous nature or the minds of the people.
Having more children is a much simpler solution to the demographic problem. But last year, Japan had the lowest number of newborn babies ever. And the challenge that Japanese women face is the government wants us to not only have more babies, but also keep working. Dubbed Womenomics, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe wants to fill 30% of leadership positions with women by 2020. But is that really what Japanese women want?
It's Friday night and young people are heading out. This is what's known as gokon in Japan. Matchmaking drinks where young people hope to meet their future partner. And being a Korean woman is not a popular move.
I'm still in two minds, but I think I want to quit my job because I see so many women struggling to juggle housework and career.
I want to marry someone who will stay at home because I will be working abroad and I want her to come with me.
Here in Japan, it's quite common for women to quit their jobs once they get married or have their first child. In fact, in a recent survey, more than 1/3 of women in their 20s said they want to become a housewife. But in reality, it's a luxury of the past. With an average annual salary of just over $30,000, not many men can afford to support their family on their own.
So once they get married, many housewives look for a part-time job. Parcel delivery has traditionally been a man's job, but Sagawa Express has decided to hire women on a part-time basis.
I have 2 children, but the hours are very flexible, so I can work while they're at school.
But these part-time drivers only earn just over $650 a month, which means they remain dependent of their husband and don't have to pay tax on their income. But there are many who want to work full-time, and the government wants to encourage them. This is a job centre only for women, especially for mothers. And looking for a full-time job when you have a young child is still difficult.
I feel that employers definitely prefer candidates without kids. I've been looking for work for 6 months now, but to be honest, I don't even know if my daughter can get a spot at a nursery, and that works against me when I apply for jobs.
If Japan is to fully utilise its female workforce, it'll take more than just policy changes, and it may take a generation or more to change its attitude. So is corporate Japan ready to accept female employees who need to juggle family life and career?
The fact of the matter is, I think, we have no choice. And it's a much better world for everybody if we have the full utilization of women who are very well educated, who are very willing to work. And the societal block that is blocking it, both structurally and also in the minds of people, that has to change. I would like to think that it's just a matter of time for people to really realize that, considering physical or negative, what we call reverse, triangle shape of demographics, and also the fact that, we won't be utilizing immigrants as the Europeans did. If such is the case, what is the option? We have no other option.
So let's find out what the future thinks. The government is trying to prepare them to carry all the burdens, but are they ready?
Learning English at a young age. For decades, Japanese children didn't learn English till they were 13. But now it's become compulsory to teach them at primary school. It's all part of the effort to globalize the next generation.
Good job.
Did you enjoy your English class?
Yes!
And what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be soccer player.
They may want to become a soccer player, but they also learn Japanese etiquette early on, seen as crucial for the polite customer service that earned Japan's service industry its reputation. This is the industry that's increasingly going abroad. A nail salon that combines Japan's latest fashion and traditional manners.
It used to be big manufacturers which went abroad, then there was Japanese food. But we also have a service industry to be proud of. When we opened our stores in Singapore and New York, customers are not just pleased but surprised by the level of service that they receive because local stores don't offer what we do.
But not everyone wants to work abroad. I've come to this career forum, and as you can see, all the young people are dressed in a black suit known as recruit suit here. They've come here to speak to possible employers.
I studied English at school, but I have no desire to study it further to be able to work abroad. If I get a job with a Japanese company, that'll be much more stable.
This is an interesting phenomenon where you have an economic decline that's now in its 25th year, where you have parents who are mortally afraid of their children falling off what's known in Japan as the escalator. And so when you don't go lockstep with your peers in finding a job, getting a promotion, they feel that you'll be left behind and that the disparity will increase. I feel it's untrue, but I think the parents here are quite worried about the futures of their kids, given what they have gone through, that they want to prevent this and take the safe route.
By the time these classmates grow up, wherever they go, Japan will be in a very different position in the global economy. For these future business leaders and employees to be competitive, many warn the education and employment systems must be reformed. As my journey comes to an end, I sense hope is already fading that the Prime Minister will be able to return the economy to its former glory anytime soon. Abenomics may be jump-starting Japan, but generating momentum in the longer term will be much harder. To convince people to change the way they work and the way they live, altering attitudes and abandoning customs, well, all that could take a generation or more.